Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. We all have a story, and everyone's story matters. Maya Angelou said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." On today's episode, we talk about making a difference in the world by sharing others' stories. Our guest is a husband and father. He started doing video in 2008 and quickly found his passion for telling stories. Well, he's come a long way since then. He's a 17-time Emmy Award winning film producer, director, documentarian, and video development specialist. He's recognized for filming on 4 Super Bowl commercial sets, and he's produced content for some of the most well-known brands, including Amazon, Kayak, Legoland Resorts, and many others. Please welcome the founder of Vela Visuals, Shawn Vela. Shawn, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's great to see you too, Jay. It's my pleasure and honor to come and talk to you about, like I said, one of my favorite things in the world, which is stories.
Mine too. And I'm so excited to jump into this conversation. And so let's dive right in. I thought that a great place for us to start would be for you to share with us, since we're talking about stories, where does your story unfold? And when did you first fall in love with video?
Well, I mean, I feel like that question in terms of where's my story unfold, I feel like it's continuously unfolding as we go. And I would say my earliest memory that I have of just being interested or just semi-interested in doing video was, I remember my dad growing up, I was probably about like 4, maybe, I don't know, between 4 and 6, right? The age where you're young enough to kind of have memories, but also the age that you they're kind of blurry, right? And so I remember my dad had this VHS camera, and he would just always record and carry it around and bring it around. So record us going to the park, climbing trees, skipping stones. And I remember my dad, at the time, that camera probably was like very expensive, right? Because it was old technology now, but it was very current at the time and had VHS tapes. And my dad, trusting with, our ability, I guess, as like 6-year-olds, allowed us to play with these cameras. And it was my sister and I. So my sister and I, 2 years apart from me, we would just go around and like carry the camera and just record each other doing stuff. So like my sister would like ride her bike down the hill and I would just like record her. And it was more of just like a fun thing to do, or like we would pretend to make movies, right? Or like pretend to there was no editing. It was just like filming and watching it back, like, oh, this was so cool. And then my dad at the time bought this fancy thing, which is like a tape adapter that you take like the mini tape and put it inside the tape and put it in a VCR and then watch it. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like we're on the TV. And so that would probably be my earliest memory of just being fascinated with the idea of creating or just capturing something and putting it on a screen for you to watch. And I just remember, thinking about that memory now, it was probably one of the most purest moments of creativity that I feel like I've had just in general. And so, fast forward to now, I feel like that's what I seek when I do things or when I create things. And as I grew older, I developed more of a passion for music. Like I loved music. My dad, a lot of it, as I get older, I'm realizing is influenced by my dad. So he would just play music all the time in the house. So like there was, even when we were studying for school, there would just be music on in the background. So I had to learn to like focus my mind and where to focus while I'm doing homework and listening to music really loud. And, but it was a thing that to me, I really enjoyed. So I just found this passion for music. And as I got older, became curious about what does that look like, in terms of the recording process to record music. So I started recording music and recording vocalists, and it was always anchored to this idea of bringing or capturing something and playing it back for yourself to see and to enjoy. Because in a sense, it's either a memory or it's something that you can think of or something that's kind of inside of you or inside someone else, and bringing it back into like a visible space or an audible space to where people can experience almost like what you're seeing or what you're hearing. So it was that ability to see that and to bring something like that to life. That was, I think, the initial draw, because to me it was cool. Like, it was like, man, like I can't believe this is possible, that you can take a thought or take an idea in your mind and bring it to real life where people can see it and hear it and create an emotional connection that way, to where people have an experience, or like they laugh because of something you did, or they're, they smile or whatever it would be. So I think that would be, my earliest memory of connecting with something like that.
Wow. I love that. And as you were telling that story, you were painting a visual for me. I could imagine myself when I first experienced video similar to what you just explained, and using that device that would take a mini video that you would then put into a larger, like a VHS type adapter, and be able to play that and be able to tell that story. It really was quite remarkable at the time, and it still amazes me today. And there's a couple of things that I want to go back to, and we're going to talk a bit more about emotion and making the emotional connection and the process involved. But when you talk about music, first of all, share with us what kind of music was played in the house when you were growing up.
Oh man, it was all different kinds. So that's actually what I love too. I feel like my dad played a variety of music. So like anything from Elvis Presley to any kind of, rock music, but then also a lot of Latin music. So like a lot of salsa, a lot of bachata. And so the Beatles, we played a lot. So it was like, I feel like a wide range of musics that I feel like kind of developed a broader sense of understanding what music actually is, right? So I know that growing up, there was a lot of people that I would talk to that they only liked one specific style of music. And I think the fact that our dad exposed us to all these different types of music, oldies, and like I said, like a variety of different things. I mean, we just listen to hip hop, R&B, we listen to pop, we listen to just a variety of different things. There were even traditional songs from where my dad grew up. My dad grew up in Ecuador, so he'd bring, these, I guess I looked at them as like these ancient traditional, tribal music type things, and played that. So I think having that wide exposure of a variety of music tempos really influenced a lot of what we do. So I think the exposure is really, was everything for us in terms of music and being exposed. And I think, that translates almost into anything, right? Like when you're creating things, the more exposure you have, the more depth that you can kind of pull from when you're making something. So.
Absolutely. Well, you just hit on a key word, and that's creativity. And so I wanted to tie back music, the influence of music, and how did that impact your creativity when you first started to get into video and were playing around with this new medium of yours? Did you find that the music itself opened your mind and opened your eyes a bit from a creativity perspective?
I would say, at the time, much like it does today, it influences probably like, I would say 80% or 90% of how something is packaged for me personally. And it's because, just that passion in music, that interest in music. What I love about sound and about music is it creates almost, it can create an emotion just by what it sounds like, certain tones or certain pitches and certain sounds. And so it really sets the mood or sets the tone, or the lack of sound, right? The lack of sound can also create a mood or a tone and a feeling. And so I feel like that's more of what I look for than anything, and it influences everything. And so usually when, packaging something, like let's say we're editing a project, usually the place that I'll start is finding music or finding tones or finding sounds, because it can develop the emotion, right? And so if you're looking for, when packaging something, for me at least, I think of like, okay, what's the emotion? What's the feeling or the common emotion that we want to connect with the audience, or we want the audience to connect to when they're experiencing what we're creating. And so looking for tones, looking for music, it can create, a feeling like you're at a party. It can create a feeling of like mysteriousness, inspiration, of something like persistence. It can like aggressiveness. Like you can just there's feelings you can create with music, so it influences everything. And that's just on the music part. But then you can go even deeper and talk about sound, right? You can talk about the sound of how somebody's voice sounds, or like the pauses that they have, and like the pacing. So for me, it almost sets a mood and a tone, and also a pace, because it's very much at least for us and for me, it's like a pacing thing, and being able to have rhythm and have flow with what you experience when you're creating a film or whatever it would be. It influences everything.
Yeah, that's really interesting, the way that you articulated that. So I studied music in college, and I was a professional musician for a number of years. And it's interesting how I use music today. You talk about the pacing and the rhythm. There's a rhythm to everything in life, and I'll use music as a way to enhance my level of creativity. So if I'm going to write something, as an example, or if I'm going to be producing a piece of content, I may look, or I may listen to a piece of music that puts me in a particular state of mind at that moment. And, you mentioned how there was music always playing, and that you were able to listen to music and do your work at the same time. Now, that's been a challenge for me. My son was always able to do that, but for me to be able to listen to the music and do the work at the same time, that was difficult, because my ear would always want to go directly to the music and not focus on what I actually needed to do. But I use it as a tool to help me become more creative. So it's interesting how we all have our different processes.
Yeah. And I think that was, like everything in life, I feel like we have these combining experiences of our life that allow us to do the things that we do today. So that was like probably like 100% accidental for my dad's part, because he just loved playing music. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is what I got to do. Right. So I just have this vivid memory that I'm in my house. My dad is outside doing whatever, like either, doing the lawn or whatever. And he had radios all over. So like there was a radio in the living room, radio in the kitchen, radio outside, and they're all tuned to like the same station somehow. And this is, back in the 90s technology. And so like the music is like on all the way, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table and with homework that I have to do, like studying biology or something. And I'm just there sitting, okay, like, I guess this is fine, and just like figuring it out. But I feel like maybe the muscle memory of having to be forced into doing that is what allowed me. It was never intentional, right? But looking back on it now, it helps me tremendously in terms of not only the creative aspect, it's being able to focus strategically on certain things, regardless of what's going on around you. Right. And so that's helped me creatively. It's also helped me circumstantially. It's helped me in tons of scenarios, even being on set. A lot of the times we'll be listening to people and what they're saying as like potential sound bites, again, listening more than anything. And so there could be tons of stuff like traffic, airplanes, lawnmowers, or whatever's going on wherever we're at. But then just focusing on that one thing, it's almost like completely by accident, because of the circumstance that my dad created, because he loved music so much, helped me find this like way to hyper focus concentration on something, regardless of like kind of what's going on. Now, granted, like there are times that I feel like, okay, like if I'm going to like, be intentional about listening to an interview or something, like maybe I'll turn the music down or something like that, depending on what it is. Like if I have to listen to 2 months, then I'll kind of like turn the music down. But if I can do something and music's in the background or something else in the background, that's usually, fine for me.
Yeah, so. Very nice. Well, it's good to be able to hyper focus that way. That's a great skill to have. So tell me, what's been the most pivotal moment in your life up to this point?
I mean, I would say there's seasons. So it just depends on the season, and it depends on the moment. So, going from early childhood, one of the earliest pivotal moments in my life was when one day I came home from school, and I was a straight A student. I loved going to school. I was very interested in school, and I came home one day, and it was on Halloween, and I came home and found that my mom passed away, and I was the early age of being 12 years old, and so very early, and that moment of growing up and having someone that you feel like you rely on, and every day you go home, almost like you think there's this person that's always going to be in your life, and you come home one day and then all of a sudden they're just you find that they're passed away and they're no longer will be in your life. And so that moment for me was incredibly pivotal in the sense of like it changed whatever I thought my life could have potentially been at an early age, right? And it taught me that things can happen in your life that you can't anticipate. And so I went from being this student who really loved school and really cared about school and just was like very hyper focused on doing well in school, to, because of that circumstance, like not caring about anything, not caring about school, not caring about wanting to do well, and kind of became like this class clown, or I had this rebelliousness about myself that I didn't want to engage. And it wasn't until years later of going through that, and walking through the stages of grief, that I feel like, again, it's all points back to my dad. I feel like he would, during that time came alongside of us and would kind of encourage us to do things that maybe at the time we didn't want to do. So one of those things for me was like going to church. And at the time, like, why did I want to go to church? I'd never been to church in my life. And my dad would force us to go to church and, take us there. And like, I would, went begrudgingly to this church service when that happened. And, turns to find out, years and years later, that I met, this beautiful lady there who was at the church, began to see her, and years later she turned into my wife, and we're married, and we have a beautiful son. And this is years of growth and time passing, but that moment for me was pivotal because it really just changed, I saw that you could have this expectation in your mind of one thing, and then a circumstantial thing can happen and it completely flips, and it can change the way that you think, the way that you behave. And it's by working, I guess, on it, and for me that working looked like going to this place that my dad didn't want us to go to, and little by little opening up and letting people in to my life, and meeting this woman who taught me things, and taught me trusting, and taught me just what it was like to be open and be in a relationship. And that lesson allowed me to really change the trajectory of my life, because through that relationship, and that's what I would say was the answer to everything. It's like, what is the relationship, right? So I lost this relationship with my mom, but that didn't mean that I didn't have other relationships in my life to lean on. And so it was like this long process of learning what relationships to lean on, and leaning on the relationship with my father and my now wife. It taught me that things in life can happen, and they oftentimes will, especially even when you look at like this past year or so, right? Like I talk to a lot of my friends, and like I feel like there should either be a book or a movie about the what could have been of 2020, because everybody has these plans of like, oh man, if the pandemic didn't happen, this is what I would have been doing, right? The what ifs. And so everybody has the what ifs, and so much like those prior scenarios, like that pivotal moment in my life, that's what I found that I use that muscle to lean into. Okay, who are the relationships in my life now? Like the relationships of my neighbors, the relationships of the people that I have to lean on to go through those times. And I feel like that taught me everything. It taught me not just, this personal thing that I feel like as a human being, I feel like I had to learn, like the ability to see value in relationships, but also it taught me tons about storytelling, because it was a moment of vulnerability in my life. And the more that I began to accept that vulnerability and not try to hide it, and not try to hide the hurt, and talk to people about it, the more I realized there were people who could relate to that, who could relate to maybe something like that, where they lost a relationship in their life, to where it could create a bond and it can create this trust between people. And so the question for me became, as I started loving and developing, films and doing film work, is how can I create that experience by connecting emotionally through video storytelling? And so it was through those series of events and learning experiences that it developed like much of the philosophy that I have today on how we tell stories, and looking for experiences that people have had to create this connection to the common emotion. And for me, the common emotion was really despair and loss and hurt. But the story didn't end there, right? The story didn't end with just the loss. That's what happened. But out of that grew this passion for being able to cling to relationships and see the value of relationships in our life, of what could potentially have the ability to help us grow.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story and being vulnerable about the story. And as you were sharing it, I was, one of the first questions that I was asking myself as I was listening to you was whether that experience is one of the reasons or part of the catalyst for you creating memories, right? Filming and telling these stories and being able to capture those memories, the stories, the emotion, all of that. And quite remarkable. And I've seen a number of pieces of work that you've created, and you touch a lot of different genres and a lot of different themes. But I tell you, some of the themes that I've seen that just emotionally pull you in, I mean, I can barely put words to it. It just is so, it's just an incredible feeling. You get pulled in and the story comes alive through not only the music, the visual, and everything else that you do with the work that you create. It's incredible. So I'd love to talk about the process that you use today to be able to tell someone's story. Describe for us what it's like. I mean, you're an artist. Describe what that art is like, to take something from a seed of an idea, sitting down with someone and trying to pull enough information to be able to create that story. What's it like for you?
Yeah, I would say, for me, it's one of the most rewarding experiences that I feel like I can do, because it is, I feel like, I used to have this mindset too, where it's like, you feel like you're pulling stuff, right? But I think it's been converting that thought of pulling to collaborating and talking and helping them share their story more than pulling, right? So like the pulling, because the idea of pulling, right, is like, oh, you're pulling something that doesn't want to be pulled. And so for me, the process has been more like, okay, I want to experience this story with you. Help me to experience. I want to see your story the way that you see it. And so it's become more of, there's two specific things that I can think of. Is one is being curious and asking questions, right? So you just ask them, just like you would a normal person, like, Jay, like, tell me about, X, Y, and Z, whatever the story is. Like, tell me about your life. Like, I remember we were talking earlier, and you said that you're in Daytona and you're from, West Virginia and in Ohio. So, like, to me, the curiosity, like, what made you go to those places? I want to find out. I want to know more about you. Like, tell me that. So that's the one, the genuine curiosity of like finding those out. And the second part is in their answers. And maybe this is just a weird thing that I do, but what I love to do is I'm obsessed with characters, right? Like when we watch movies or we watch TV shows, I just love the characters of them. And like a really silly example is, maybe a couple of years ago, there was that TV show that was really popular, like Breaking Bad, right? And to me, without, I guess, spoiling it, because at this point, hopefully everybody's seen that, but if they haven't, whatever, this can be ruined for them. What I thought was really cool about that show was there was this character, and the character was like this, very straight edge, put together teacher, chemistry teacher. And in the beginning, found out he was diagnosed with cancer, So when you look at this guy, you feel bad for him. You're just like, man, I feel so bad for you. Like all this stuff is happening, and you clearly can tell like this guy had the potential to be like this great chemist or whatever it was. And then he gets thrown into this scenario where he's essentially like taking his life back because, prior everybody's taking advantage of him, treating him like crap. And then, you see him like taking this moment where he goes out, even though it's like kind of, a taboo subject of like, I'm going to go out and make meth. Right. And then, so that's where you start. But by the end of the whole series, this guy is like this drug lord, probably the opposite of straight edge, the worst human being you could probably think of in real life. But for some reason, as an audience person, as a viewer, I wanted to root for him. Mm-hmm. Like I was on his team. I cared about him, even though like he's the most horrible person. And my curiosity is like, why is that? It's because you could connect with the character, because maybe there's parts of his character that you can connect with, or maybe even see yourself in. So when I listen to people's stories and like when they're telling me, when I ask them questions, that's what I look for. I look for like, okay, is there something that I feel like I can see a little bit of myself in their story somehow, either by the way that could have made me feel, or maybe like, oh, I know what it's like for you to move from, West Virginia to Ohio. Not that I've done that specific move, but like when I moved to Orlando, Florida, I moved from Philadelphia to Orlando, and I had to like, give up everything to start this new life and not know anyone. So I can only imagine that might be part of your story. So maybe I'll ask about that. And so it's just genuinely being curious and asking people questions and looking for emotions that, common emotions that I feel like I can connect to. Because I feel like, again, this is just an idea. This is maybe one way that I do it, but it's just like, if I can connect to maybe an emotion, maybe there's a good chance that other people could, and so that's what I look for initially before even thinking about like, camera angles or sound or music or whatever. So that's what I would probably look for.
So do you find that the clients that you work with, do they typically have the idea in mind? Let's just say almost a visual of what the final product is, or is it a situation where they sit down with you and say, we want to create XYZ. We don't know what this is going to look like, but we're putting it in your trusting hands to create this from cradle to grave?
Right. I would say it varies. And so that's kind of the beauty of I feel like the experience of what we've done is it's a combination of both. Sometimes, and a lot of times when you work with like some of the bigger brands, they'll have their own marketing agencies, or they'll have their own messaging teams that they'll have like everything kind of like their messaging, their brand identities, like all of those kind of messaging tools in mind. And they'll come to you and they'll say, hey, could you put together like a director's type of, presentation for us that we could see what this could look like. Right. And so it's up to us to kind of think and present it of like what a director, like a pitch type thing for them. Or they'll have an idea like, look, like we want to create brand assets to be able to package, and we'll go out. So like they'll have some sense of idea, and we'll go out and, capture a lot of branding assets or like visuals, but it would be a collaboration more than anything. And so much like any other kind of collaboration, it just depends on the level of collaborating. And sometimes people want to be more involved. And so like I said, I noticed like some of the bigger agencies or the bigger brands, sometimes they are very specific in terms of what they want to communicate, what their messaging is, because they've probably hired some kind of messaging, team or messaging group of people that they want to do that. Whereas on the other hand, we worked with people where they say, look, like we know that we want a video. We don't know what it would look like. And we want to tell a story because we love storytelling. And, what would you suggest? That's the other side of it. And so we've come in and worked on both sides of that equation. But also there's, clients that we've had where they'll say they want to produce a variety of different types of productions, like maybe they're online courses, or maybe they're landing page sales videos, right? And so for us, it's more of a collaboration based off of what the level of that they would like to collaborate with. And, I feel like our job more than anything is to come alongside and collaborate and come to them where they're at and help in whatever capacity they would like to help. And so by just allowing them the opportunity to say like, hey, these are where we could help you if you wanted to. And we let them know, like, we could help with messaging and, the interviews, and looking for stories is mainly what we would do. And so if somebody wanted to tell a story or do something like that, we'll schedule time to talk just about stories in the same way that we talked about earlier, of like asking them questions and essentially like building like a story list with them of potential stories, and then looking for characters that we could talk to pull out certain stories.
Interesting. So our audience is a combination of entrepreneurs, small business owners. If you were, based on your experience and all the different clients that you've worked with over the years, if you were sitting across from a small business owner right now who was interested in creating a video that's going to have some sort of impact, that tells a story about their business or perhaps how they serve their clients, what piece of advice would you share with them about getting started, or maybe something that they should be thinking about so they can be more efficient about the process of creating this video?
Right. If I was to give my best advice to, someone like you said, like a business owner or an entrepreneur who wants to tell a story for their business specifically, and I'll put the specific goal of like engaging with more clients, customers, or people that they want to work with, I would say don't tell the story that you think you want to tell about yourself. Tell your client's story and allow them to see themselves in that story. And the reason I say that is because who you're talking to will change the way that you talk and the kind of story that you tell. And if the idea is, for me, if I'm thinking about like when I watch a movie, I want to see myself in that story. And when I see myself, I can connect emotionally with that story. Then find a way or a story to tell that allows your client or your potential customer or person that you want to work with to be able to see their own selves in the story that you're telling, so that they can connect emotionally with that story. Because as many people know, when you connect emotionally, that gives you the credibility to be able to speak into that relationship. You're forming a relationship with the emotional connection. And so then you have the permission, right? It's like, if you just go and tell the story that maybe you think you need to be told. And that's the thing that I've noticed, is that a lot of times people who want to tell the story about their business, they're like, okay, this is the year that we started our business. This is what we do now. Here's all the things that we offer. And it's like, if you're thinking about it like as a real person, like, especially with all the content that exists now, like there's not many people who will just want to sit down and, pull up a chair and like, all right, let me watch this video about this guy. Tell me all the history and bullet points of his business. Like I can Google that and look at the website on the history or whatever it is. And so if you're convincing someone like on social media or whatever it is, it's like you want to build a relationship, and to build the relationship first, it's like allow people to see themselves in the story. And so what we'll do is we'll look for who are like some of the top 5 or top people that you've helped. And can we talk to them? I would love to hear what they say about how you help them, because 9 times out of 10, we have the curse of knowledge as business owners, to where we'll be like, oh, I know, if I just let our customers know we do this, this, and this is our messaging, then we'll be able to help them, right? But sometimes the way that the people that we help think is they may communicate that differently. And so by talking to the people that we've helped, we'll be able to notice other stories, maybe reasons why they even wanted to look for our help in the begin with. And then we'll notice the relationship dynamics, how it's changed their life, how it's enhanced their life, or what were some of the pitfalls, or what were some of the hurts that they had that drew them to this reason to want to hire you. Like a silly example would be like a real estate person, right? Let's say like someone is, helps people buy or sell homes or whatever it is. Like sometimes people who want to sell their homes, maybe they're older, and so they end up selling their homes, or like it's hard for them to sell their homes because of all the memories they made in their house, right? And so part of the barriers to be able to sell your home is to get over that barrier. So what are the potential barriers that maybe somebody who sold their home and who had a deep, strong connection, with their home in terms of memory, and like they watched their kids grow up there, like this is the closet where I measured, my son's growth to where he went to college, right? So those are barriers to wanting to be able to hire someone to help them. So like to hear another person say, oh, like, I had those same memories as you, but you know what? Like this person helped me, and this is why it was better for my life, because, it allowed me to have a better, whatever the answer is, like I do still love my son. It comes from a different heart and a different emotion to speak to that, as opposed to somebody coming in and saying like, hey, like, I'm going to come sell your home for top dollar. Let me sell your home and then we'll just get it ready and we'll sell it, while they're neglecting the emotional attachment that somebody could have. So it allows you to speak into the emotional attachment that somebody may have, but from a safer space, from somebody who's kind of like in the same zone or same playing field as them. So I would look for stories like that first, and then that will allow the bridge to like, hey, now I can be like, look, not only can we do that or be aware of those emotional things, but like we want to make sure that you're selling your home for and getting the most equity out of it or something like that. So again, that's a silly example within the context of real estate. But I would say that the principle could be similar of looking for the types of people or the connections, the emotional connection.
So what's the biggest challenge that you face right now, and what actions are you taking specifically to overcome those challenges?
That's a great question. I feel like depending on the day, it's a different thing, right? I feel like everybody has different challenges. I would say, one of the hugest, it's like a business and personal challenge that I feel like maybe a lot of us can relate to, is just the managing of, work and life balance, right? And it's the managing of the stewarding of the time, stewarding the time of the people that we help, stewarding the time of, our own personal growth time, and stewarding the time of, spending time with, making sure we spend time with our significant others and our families, right? And our children, if we have them. And so I would say, for me, it's a continual challenge. And I say challenge to the extent of like, it's not an issue, but it's like, it's a daily thing. And I think it should be a challenge, because if it's not a challenge, that means you're not thinking about it. And so, because to me, I create that as a challenge in my mind every day on purpose, so that I can be intentional about the time. Because for me, I feel like time is the most important thing that we all have. It's the ultimate resource, right? It's the one thing that once you spend it, you can't get it back. Right. And so, by insisting upon myself that I have to make that a challenge on my own self, I feel like is also the challenge within itself, but it's also the solution, because the fact that I make it a challenge, it insinuates that I need to work on it. And so every day when I wake up, I'm like, okay, how can I be intentional about the time that I'm spending? What's the time, not that it's like a rigorous thing, but like at least to make sure that like I'm spending a certain amount of time on rejuvenating, thinking on my mind. Not only that, I'm taking time to like put my phone away and not respond to emails, because I'm sure like many other people, like that's the thing that I can easily see myself, because I love what I do and because I'm so passionate about it. I'm easily a workaholic. Like I love it. I love hearing people's stories, telling them, finding connections and ways to their story, hearing their story, and finding ways to help them achieve their business goal by using their story through video, and finding other ways to use their story in other ways. Like, I just love that. I love the experimentation of it and seeing what things you can put together. At the same time, I love my family. I love spending time. I love spending family time. I love watching my son grow up. I love making traditions with my family because I believe also that traditions are what allow us to make memories, right? So my son and I have this thing that we do every Wednesday. We call it Pizza Wednesday, to where we'll go to the grocery store and we'll go through. In Florida, we have a grocery store called Publix, and we'll go down the aisles and he'll sit on the little shopping cart. And we have this routine. We'll go in a circle. Like we'll go, oh, he'll be like, Daddy, let's go get the pizza dough. So we'll get the pizza dough. It's like, all right, next, before we get the sauce, let's go see the lobsters. And like, he'll go to the tank and look at the lobsters and see the lobsters. Then we'll get the sauce. Then we'll get the cheese. We'll pay for it. And I think, at the time, like it's like $7.77 is the total of like that purchase. So we'll take it home, and then like he'll take a nap, or we'll do something. And then at like around 4:00, we'll put on this music, because my dad, again, like loved music, and we'll put on like, That's Amore. We'll put on like these different like songs that make me feel like we're making pizza, and we'll put it really loud. We'll just like press the dough, we'll put the sauce down, and it's like this whole experience, right? But for me, I've learned this, in some of the stories that I've told for different people, that like traditions are important. So by doing that, for me, that's a way to be intentional, to look to make traditions with spending time with my family, and even if it's like once a week. So I would say those are things that I try to do, and I'm not perfect. Sometimes the working and the passion for what I do gets the better of me, and like I'll miss like a Wednesday, and then my son will be like, Daddy, you forgot pizza Wednesday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let's do pizza Thursday. And then we'll do it. And then we'll just do it on Thursday. So it's like, by no means am I perfect or in any kind of way, because we're not perfect. And there's times that it happens, but I guess clinging to this idea of the tradition for me is looking in the personal life is kind of what has helped, so I guess by admitting the challenge, acknowledging the challenge as like, okay, I'm going to work towards this. It gives me like marching orders, like, all right, this is not a challenge. Maybe it's like a task, right? Maybe a to-do thing or something like that. Like I have this thing to be challenged with, or to-do thing to do. And so that's essentially, I don't know, hopefully that answers your question. But I would say those are the things I look for.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I love the story that you told and the traditions that you're creating. I mean, talk about making memories. One day, many years from now, your son is going to be telling that exact story about Dad taking me to the grocery store and what you guys did on those Wednesdays. Imagine that. And the more of those types of memories that we can create, what a rich and fulfilling, not only childhood for him, but a rich and fulfilling life for you. That's creating legacy. That's amazing. So when we talk about things that push us to strive to be better, I came across a quote that you said, and I'm going to repeat this quote. And then if you would, I would love it if you would unpack this a bit for us. And you said, quote, "You literally have to die to yourself and truly hone into your craft in order to create and see someone else's vision." What does that mean to you?
For me, I think that describes my creative journey. And I feel like when we're first starting as creatives, right? I mean, I hate to put a label on it, but like, just engaging in anything that you feel is creative. And creativity can be defined in multiple ways. It's not just art or painting or whatever. It can be defined in the way that a meal that you make for someone, maybe trying new things and experimenting. And so for me, that creative journey, when I first started, I noticed it was initially very curious and a little bit selfish, right? And so the selfish part of it was, looking inward and looking to myself and like, what are the things that I care about? What are the things that I have to say? Which I think are valid, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's part of the journey. And I feel like in going through that process, it helped me personally develop like this way of thinking and, a taste for certain things that I liked and certain things that I didn't. But it wasn't until I conscientiously worked to help someone create something inside of themselves that I realized I had to shed the pre-notions of what I thought creativity was, what it looked like to me, what my tastes were in terms of like music choices, maybe even, and really shed those away to be able to create something that could potentially have the ability to be even more impactful, right? Because the philosophy for me is like, we're only as good as the the ideas that are put, or we can only create something as good as the ideas that are in the collective creative project, right? And so if the only ideas that are in the collective creative project are coming from me, then I'm limited to whatever only I can think of. So by collaborating with other people and by listening and hearing their stories and listening to like the emotions and experiences that they've had, it allows me to put my own thoughts, my own feelings on the back burner and listen to them and, strategically bring in my experiences and my thoughts, but allow the collaborativeness to build the creative result, right? And so by having more inputs, and it's just like what we talked about earlier, the idea of like by having more experiences, or the depth that you have, the experiences of a variety of things that you have, like for the music thing, right? Our dad played a variety of music. So like I wouldn't have known who the Beatles were, growing up in a family. My dad is from Ecuador. So our family is very Latin American, right? So we listen to salsa, bachata. You wouldn't think that maybe, a Latin family would listen to oldies, classics, or whatever. But by having the variety or the ability to experience those things, or the I guess the exposure to those things, I wouldn't have known. And so it's the same thing. It's like I can, if I have more exposure to different thoughts, different ideas, and allowing things into the process, allowing ideas, allowing people into the process, it allows the creative result to be even better than what I could have done on my own. So to kind of bring it back for full circle, it's the more that I die to myself, meaning shed my own emotions, my own thoughts, my own preconceived thoughts, and listening and bringing other people's thoughts into it, then I feel like I can never truly steward someone's story if I'm only coming into trying to tell someone else's story using my own things, right? And so
that's powerful. That's deep. But I get that. I understand it. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. Very, very powerful. So what are 1 to 2 books that you've read that have had a tremendous impact on your outlook on life?
The first one, most importantly, I would say the Bible, believe it or not. Even a lot of people, it's like an ancient text from back in the day, but the stories in there are, for me, incredible. Like I'm fascinated by the stories in there. And, not only that, there's tons of business principles inside of the Bible. Not only that, like business principles, discernment principles of like how to make choices, wisdom ideas. There's just tons of information / inspiration in that book for me personally that transformed everything, the way that I do, the way that I live my life on a personal level, and the way that I work to help people, from this idea of moving from self to serve, right? And serving people. And I would say that's kind of another one of the messages of it, like the golden rule, right? Like you want to treat people the way you want to be treated and serve them. And so like that's something that continues to impact me today. And I would say another book that I would say in my maybe like early 20s that tremendously impacted me was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about that book and what it continues to teach me today is just the genuine curiosity of asking people about themselves and being genuinely interested in talking to them. And something that I use every single day in my life of talking to people, of interacting with people, and just genuinely being interested in them, to be able to help.
Love that. Thank you for sharing those two. So what is the overarching message that you would like to leave our audience with?
I would say the overarching message that I would love to leave is, I think storytelling for business is important, right? And storytelling for companies or using it within the business context is important. But not only that, I feel like there is a huger, more impactful importance that stories have in our lives, because it literally shapes our lives. It shapes the lives of the people around us, not only the stories that we have, but the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that other people tell themselves about the way that we live our lives. So I feel like there's this bigger stewardship idea that we have of the stories and engaging with stories in our lives that literally has the potential to impact our own lives, change our lives, but impact the people's lives around us. And so by acknowledging, one, that we all have a valuable story to tell, and whether we believe it or not, and I'm a victim to this, especially early, in my career, because I would, doing what I do, I get to meet so many amazing people who I feel like have amazing stories, right? You hear stories of people who just do incredible things, and you're like, man, like when I compare my life to theirs, it's like, it's not even as cool. It's not interesting. I'm not an interesting person, right? But the reality is, we all have a story to tell, and we all are interesting in different ways, and interesting to an extent that our stories have the ability to connect with specific people, right? And the stories that we have can connect with people. And so I think acknowledging and finding courage and finding just genuine permission to think and to know that you have a story that is valuable and it's important, and you should share it. Not only should you share it, but you should use your story to interact and build emotional connections and relationships with people, whether you're using it in a business or just going outside and talking to your neighbors. Like, it will genuinely enrich your life. At least that's how I feel about it. And I feel like the relationships that I've built from the stories that I've heard and learned, and people that I've talked to, it's enriched my life. So that's probably what I would want more for anyone else over the business goals and success. Is I would love that too for people, but it's just the genuine growth of and impact of relationships.
Couldn't agree more with you. So before I ask my final question to you, and let me just interject by saying that we are going to have to schedule round 2 of this, because there are so many areas, Shawn, that I would love to go deep on you with. And we didn't even talk about yoga. We didn't talk about your morning routines. We didn't talk about mindset and so many other valuable things that I know would be beneficial to our audience. So you be on the lookout for another invitation. But before I ask my final question, where can we go to connect, to be able to consume your content, to look at the videos that you've created? And you have a course available. Where can we go?
All right. So I would say the easiest place to go is to our website, our corporate website, which is velavisuals.com. On there, you'll see examples of the work that we've done, a way to contact us to our email, also a link to our course on documentary filmmaking secrets, which I created for other people like me. So when I created that course, I imagined, knowing what I know today, or at least the lessons that I've learned and continue to learn, what could I say to my younger self about some of the things that I've learned if I was talking to like the 2008 version of myself who was just starting to get into this world of filmmaking and wanting to tell stories with a camera. And so I just thought of, some strategic things that I've learned, whether it's about like pre-production, how to find stories, how to plan for telling stories, some of the things that you can capture, and some editing ideas, some things about music, some things about audio. And so it's more of a thought of what I would tell myself, in hopes to be able to help encourage other people who are interested in video creation like I was when I was younger, just getting started.
Outstanding. Well, we will link to that, of course, in the show notes. So here is my final question to you. What are you adding or removing from your life right now to live a more fulfilled and more meaningful life?
I would say what I'm adding to my life in my mind, what I think in this current season is to live a more fulfilled life is more time with people that I care about, allowing myself to be intentional and, actually saying no to a lot more stuff so that I can spend time with people that I love and people that I care about. And that is, my family, number one. And number two, the people that we help, I love and I care about them. And so finding ways to help them more. And not only that, but even taking time to have downtime in the morning. For me, morning times are like the most important thing of my day. So continuing to add to that routine that I have in the morning of getting up at 5 a.m., taking time to journal, to write, to run. I love running, and to be just intentional about taking time to think, and put thoughts together. I would say those, even though that's something that I continually do, but always finding new ways to add more nuance to it is what I'm doing.
Wonderful. I love that. Shawn, thank you so very much for joining us on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I have loved this conversation. It's just been a wonderful experience, and I appreciate you sharing of your experience, telling some incredible stories and providing words of wisdom and great value for our audience. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Absolutely. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love it if you would share one or two key takeaways from this episode. Let us know what you thought about this one. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help your service-based business, all you have to do is visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Please share your story, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear. Jay Shear.
Business Consultant.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.